my talk. Here we go. How he said he living life as a gringo, where you question where you fit in every time you mingle. They say you do this with not enough that. My rapping is really bad. This life as a gringo.
Yes, hello and welcome to another episode of Life as a Gringo. I am Dramos, of course. It is Thursday, so it means it's time for our Thursday Trends episode. Flying solo on the show today, just to want to just dig into a couple of different stories that have been going on. I will say ahead of time, this episode is not as heavy as other ones we've had, so I'm not in the mood to get into the shits right now. I don't think any of us really want to do it on a regular basis, so I'm going to have some lighter stories that still matter today that I think we should be talking about from this last week. So we're going to talk about some migrants that were bused to Los Angeles. And as horrible and as much of a political stunt as this obviously is, it backfired because the people of LA, where the bus ended up, actually welcomed these migrants with open arms. So we're going to talk about that story. We're also going to, on a heavier note, but with some positivity, we're going to talk about the maternal death rate for women of color and a Latina OBGYN who is actually offering up some tips that could potentially save the lives of the women that we love. This is a real issue in this country, so we'll talk about that. And then for our Mi Gente segment, honoring people who are just doing it right, let's talk about the Flamin Hot movie, which has been getting crazy reviews, and also a legendary Latina songwriter and singer makes history, becoming the first Latina inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. So we're going to talk all about that on today's show. But first and foremost, as we always do, let's first start off with just getting into some of the nonsense, the BS from this last week in a segment we call For the People in the Back.
Say it louder for the people in the Say it louder for the people in the back.
All right, so let's first and foremost start with these migrants that have been bussed out of Texas. And this isn't the first time we've seen this. This is a stunt from Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who is saying that this was necessary because it provided, quote, much needed relief to Texas border communities. Obviously, this is a political stunt to try and stick it to the Dems, the progressives, as California is a sanctuary state. So they sent them on a 20-hour bus ride to Los Angeles with little food and what is being described as scant bathroom facilities. And of course, the idea of these stunts, and we've seen it from Ron DeSantis out of Florida as well, the idea is that they're going to send these people there, and everybody, in the state that they go to is going to be so upset, and they're not going to provide them any sort of help, and it's going to show that nobody wants migrants here, right? Well, this backfired, right? This little political stunt, the political theater that happens right now with many of these types of politicians, it backfired because when these migrants arrived in LA, they were actually greeted by LA Latinos, and as We Are Me Too puts it, not with disdain and hostility, but as, quote, brothers and sisters. And again, this is not the first time Governor Abbott has done something like this. He's taken pride in bragging about busing migrants to Democratic cities like New York, as well as Washington, D.C., where, Vice President Kamala Harris is home, actually, and in Chicago as well. But again, it backfired because people with hearts recognize that these are human beings at the end of the day. And these aren't people that are here for your, political gain and to galvanize your potential voters. These are people that, again, are coming for a better life and deserve to be treated as the human beings that they are. And it was a total of 42 migrants. And, I'm not going to dive into all of the quotes, but you have some of them talking about how grateful they are for the reception that they received, how they have been able to secure jobs, since arriving in Los Angeles and all these things. So, what was supposed to be a negative for someone like Governor Greg Abbott, pulling this stunt to essentially try and overwhelm California and make them prove that they are a sanctuary state. Again, it backfired because I think majority of us in this country, anybody with any sort of morals or decency, we don't want to see other human beings suffer. And I think we have to keep reminding these crazy politicians and these really extremists on particularly when we talk about this topic, the Republican side, like the majority of Americans are not bad people. The majority of Americans see the humanity in others and don't want to see us mistreating one another for nonsense, right? And you hope that when it comes to the voting, when it comes down to the put up or shut up moments, that the majority will come out and speak with their votes and say, no, this is not okay. I mean, and that's kind of what we saw in the 2020 election, when Trump and Biden. I don't think people were super energized necessarily by Biden, but it was the idea that we've seen the things that Donald Trump has done over the last 4 years, that he's said, that he has stood upon, the people that he has propped up, and we're not okay with that, and they can have all their protests and all of their rallies and make it seem like, no alternative exists, right? Because that's always the argument when you see these Trump rallies on TV. They talk about, well, how come there's never any Joe Biden rallies? And I don't think anybody is unnecessarily obsessed with Joe Biden in the way that the people who are the extremists of the Republican Party are obsessed with Donald Trump. And people like Governor Greg Abbott or Ron DeSantis, as we've talked about a bunch, they're taking a page out of Donald Trump's playbook of being extreme, being inhumane, and using it as a way to energize a potential fan base, right? And again, at the expense of real human beings who are literally just trying to get a better life for themselves, right? And I think, I'm really trying to get to this place politically where I want to be someone who can bridge that gap, right? Because I think at the end of the day, if I'm just, and let me get my soapbox for a second, but if I'm just like doing the same satire or roasting of the other side, like we see, on the internet, I'm not an agent of change or an agent of betterment for this country, or this world. I'm just perpetuating the same cycle of hate. And it's difficult when you see things like this one. And I try and talk about this stuff in a way that I don't want it to be polarizing, right? But I want to be honest. And I'm trying to work that balance, of kind of saying like, I get that not everybody is evil, like the people we're talking about here, like Greg Abbott and things like that. So if that is the case, that you're not an evil person, you care about other human beings, you have to take some sort of a stand, even if you are traditionally a Republican, and say like, this is not okay. I don't agree with this and these types of actions, and I'm not going to stand by it. I don't agree with it, and I'm not going to stand by it, and you have to take that stand, because again, that's the only place we get to healing. Like, I'm all for people who have differentiating views, but I'm not going to empower people to be extremists who are just horrible people at the end of the day and blindly following, a bunch of crazy people just because they happen to have a R next to their name. I think we have to be beyond that. And I think I'm just trying to preface how maybe my commentary might begin to evolve as we continue down this road. And I still want to call out the bullshit, the nonsense, and like cases like this one, but I am trying to find ways to not be like divisive or like just driving a knife through, somebody's heart or something. I want to just talk to you as a human being, and hopefully that awakens you to some of the atrocities that are happening. Now moving on to another topic that is just incredibly important. It's this maternal death rate that we see for women of color in this country, and it's actually on the rise, which is incredibly scary. So according to wearemetoo.com, the facts are that women of color are 2 to 3 times more likely to die on average from pregnancy-related issues than their white counterparts. And they go on to say, additionally, the maternal mortality rate for Hispanic women has increased by 44% in the aftermath of COVID-19. Wow, so Hispanic women, Latino women, the mortality rate, the maternal mortality rate has increased by 44% since the aftermath of COVID-19. And this is like my other issue this speaks to the larger issue of like American propaganda of like us thinking our shit don't stink and we have no improvements to make. There's no reason why the greatest country in the world should have a maternal death rate like this, and it just speaks to the larger issues and the internalized sort of racism that happens, right? Now, they go on to say in the article, if you are a woman of color currently pregnant in the U.S., Dr. Ali has some invaluable advice for you, right? So this is an OBGYN, a woman of color, and they've turned to Instagram this week to spread awareness on how to keep yourself safe and well-informed. Now, here is some of the tips that this doctor, Dr. Ali, has actually stated for any pregnant women, and obviously specifically women of color, who are affected by this and are dying at these sort of crazy, unnecessary rates, right? And I just think it's important to know this information. I don't have kids just yet. I want to one day. So like, I want to learn all about these different things, potentially if this is a position I could find myself in, right? Now, the first piece of advice she says is build a reliable community that knows where you are at all times. They say Dr. Ali's first piece of advice is to build a close community of people who you can lean on. She says, I want you to get your group of friends, your family, anyone close to you who knows you are pregnant, and turn on your location. You send an SOS text, someone needs to be able to go to where you are immediately. She reiterates that the heightened dangers of pregnancy for women of color, stating, quote, it does not matter your socioeconomic status, your education, where you live, it's just a fact. You are more likely to die. Everyone around you needs to know that. And I think there was even like a story that came out about Beyonce having pregnancy complications, right? So we're talking about somebody who's like of the 1% and famous and still potentially was facing some sort of issue, right? Now, the other piece of advice, she says, you need to be your own biggest advocate. Although speaking up for yourself in a medical situation can seem stressful and intimidating, it can also save your life and that of your unborn child. Dr. Ali stresses the importance of advocating for yourself and trusting your gut in these instances. Quote, Black women and women of color who are pregnant, who go to the ER or go to triage, they're not going to be listened to as well as someone who is white. So if you feel off and you feel that something is wrong, you are going to fight for what you want done, period. And they go on to say, maintain open communication with your medical provider. Dr. Ali says, quote, talk to your provider, your doctor, your midwife, whoever's taking care of you. Let them know the statistics and that you are 3 to 4 times more likely to die, and let them know that that worries you and scares you and that you want to feel like they're someone you can trust. Now, the other last piece of advice she says is stay well informed and be aware of advice from non-medical professionals. Nowadays, when influencers are regarded with the utmost authority on any variety of topics, Dr. Ali warns against heeding any advice that does not come directly from a trusted medical professional. She says, quote, be very, very picky about where you're getting your medical information. She explains, nowadays on social media, it is all available to all of us. She explains, nowadays on social media, it is available to us all of the time. I beg you, if you are a Black woman or woman of color, do not listen to the influencers or people who are not medically educated in this field when you're looking for advice throughout your pregnancy. It's way too risky. Instead, she suggests finding a community of doctors and medical professionals that you trust. Quote, I say that, and I know that it can be very, very difficult, but I promise you, we are out there. So all good tidbits of advice. And again, even the fact that we have to have this conversation and there has to be, this rundown of a list of advice, it shows you that there is an issue in this country and there continues to be. And I'm not saying that this country is horrible and we should just burn it to the ground and start all over again. What I'm saying is we have to address things head on. There is an internalized racism, whether the doctors and medical professionals know it or not, where they're not listening to women of color in the same way that they listen to white women, their white counterparts, and the numbers express that. So all things to be aware of for you and your loved ones. And I love that these types of conversations are happening on social media, and wearemetoo.com is highlighting things like this. Now, with that said, we talked about the nonsense, the heavy stuff from this last week. So now let's get into our Mi Gente segment, celebrating some people from our community who have been doing some amazing, amazing things. Mi Gente. All right, so let's first and foremost start with the Flamin Hot movie, right? So I I have to admit, I haven't seen it yet. It's on my Hulu list. I know my business partner Brenda is going to be on my ass about not having seen it yet, but it's on my list. I have a little bit more of like a chill weekend as far as the nights go, so I'm going to be definitely watching this probably Friday. Tomorrow will be my night to watch it. But they're getting crazy good reviews and feedback from this movie, which is obviously what you want to see when we talk about a movie that centers around Latinos and is giving us the representation we've all been searching for. So they're saying that in the first 3 days since its release, the film has become the most watched streaming premiere for Searchlight Pictures. It has screened at the White House and has resonated with audiences worldwide. Now, according to wearemetoo.com, or as it's written by them, the inspiring story is directed by Eva Longoria, which features the story of Richard Montañez. Growing up in a poor Mexican immigrant family, Montañez, who started out as a janitor at Frito-Lay, became a business executive, author, and alleged creator of the Flamin Hot products. And they say that for Latinos, the story goes further than your typical zero-to-hero film. It's a portrait of how, despite the multi-generational struggle faced by our community, we keep moving forward and showing the world que sí se puede. And I love how they wrote that. And I think that was what I got from, again, my business partner, Brenda, who was describing to me, just talking about how inspired she was by the story. And I have to watch that. It's on my list. But that's the beauty of this, right? That's like what we've all been fighting for, is the idea that we can watch something where we see people that look like us or come from a similar background to us and watch their story of success, and you automatically feel like it's just a little bit more possible for you. And I think sometimes that's all we need. Sometimes we just need that nudge, or we need that reminder that our ideas aren't that crazy, that other people who look like us and come from similar backgrounds have dreamed it and done it, right? And again, sometimes that's all you need to get out of your own way and start going after the things that genuinely make you happy. And that's why I love any sort of content like this, but like on the bigger stage, you're talking about, a Hulu movie and it breaking all types of records for the production company behind it. This is going to change the lives of so many people in a positive manner. And again, it just continues to diversify Hollywood and normalize our stories being told to a wider audience, which is definitely what we need. Now, the other positive story I want to get into was celebrating a legend, man. Gloria Estefan, right? Legendary singer-songwriter. She has actually become the first Latina inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. So Cuban-American music icon Gloria Estefan became the first Latina inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. And it was this week, and the award ceremony was held at the Marriott Marquis Hotel in New York City. And she was honored for penning her own hit songs like Mi Tierra, Shakira's Whenever, Wherever, which I didn't realize she wrote that, and Jennifer Lopez's Let's Get Loud, which I didn't realize that either. And while receiving her award, Estefan told the crowd, quote, "Music has saved my life." And she actually performed a medley of her greatest hits, including Miami Sound Machine era hits like Rhythm Gonna Get You and Words Get in the Way. I grew up listening to Gloria Estefan via my parents, so they've been big fans of her since I was a kid. It's crazy to think that she's the first Latina inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. Yeah, it's just wild to think. And also, I didn't realize she penned like hits like that one, which is absolutely insane. She's just a legend. And I think, again, like, just breaking new ground. And now that you've seen her do it, it means that it's not impossible for any other Latina to go and walk in her footsteps or carve out your own path in a similar way. It's just beautiful. It's beautiful to see our people getting their roses. And I love when we do it internally in our community and things like that. But I know as an artist, as a creative, you also want to feel like you're playing in the bigger picture of everything as well, right? And I'm not dumbing down, like, for example, let's say Latin Grammys or something like that. I think it's beautiful. But what also happens is for us, we get put into more of like a niche box, right? As if we can't exist with everybody else and still have our greatness shine and people be able to relate to it, right? So things like this, where we step into the bigger playing field, the larger pond, and come out as, like she is, a member of the Hall of Fame now and recognized for her greatness on the larger scale of music as a whole and not just Latin music. I think that is, again, A, as an artist, the ultimate accomplishment, but B, when it comes to inspiring or breaking, negative traditions or stereotypes or limiting not only beliefs, but limiting situations and industries that don't embrace diversity the way they should. Like, all of this begins to normalize our presence in every aspect of normal life in this country and the world. So things like this are incredible. They have to be celebrated. So big shout out to her. She's had obviously an incredible career. I think she actually even performed with her husband and I think her grandchild or her child or her actual child on the stage as well, which is really dope. So man, Flaming Hot movie. I'm gonna check that out on Friday. Hold me to it. I'll do an accountability check on my social media at Dramos on Instagram after I finish it up. So I'm definitely gonna catch up on that tomorrow. And man, that's it for the positive stuff happening. So with that said, we will tie everything we talked about today in a neat little bow in a segment we call Conclusions Stew.
Time for conclusions stew.
All right, so just kind of touching on things that we talked about today. I love how this whole migrant bus to LA backfired on Governor Greg Abbott of Texas. I think a lot of these people assume that the majority of the people in this country are as batshit crazy as they are and as heartless as they are and as addicted to power as they are. And stories like this one where you have Latinos in Los Angeles welcoming these people in open arms and giving them everything they possibly can to help make their journey just a little bit easier. It shows you the humanity that exists in this country and that I would hope to begin to see on a wider scale. And again, I hope it serves as a reminder to these crazy politicians that the rest of the world doesn't think like you. And the more you begin to do stunts like this, you're going to alienate people and eventually it's going to be your own demise. So, stop being a dick, basically, right? And man, stop putting your own bloodthirst for power ahead of humanity at the end of the day. That's just sickening. So you love to see stories like this one where, as a community, specifically like Latinos over there, just coming together and recognizing like these are our people, these are our brothers and sisters, and we have to take care of them in their time of need. And I just think that that's huge. And I hope it's a mindset that we all continue to adapt in every aspect of our lives. Now, this other story about the Latina OGBYN offering tips for women of color because of this crazy maternal death rate that just continues to rise in this country. And I'm startled by the fact that Latinas, their maternal mortality rate has actually increased by 44% since the pandemic. That's just so wild to me and fucking scary. And how they say that women of color are 2 to 3 times more likely to die on average from pregnancy-related issues than their white counterparts. Like, all really scary numbers that obviously should not exist in the United States of America in 2023. But again, it's like long history of racism and white supremacy has led to this mentality. And again, I don't think it's all conscious, but has led to this mentality where doctors are on a larger scale not listening to women of color when they express concerns or taking their concerns as seriously. And it's resulting in them dying at a higher rate than their white counterparts. Again, I even brought up, I think I read an article about Beyonce having some sort of pregnancy complications. And again, she's rich and famous. If she's going to have issues, then that means all of us can potentially have issues like this one if we're not careful and knowing what to look out for and don't advocate for ourselves. So I love that you have someone like Dr. Ali who's taking to social media and trying to educate people on how they can try and combat this and potentially save the lives of themselves or the people that they love. Now, on a positive side of things, man, this Flamin Hot movie getting crazy reviews. Again, it's became the most watched streaming premiere for Searchlight Pictures. And it's just hugely inspiring. And I think it continues to prove the power of Latinos and how our stories can be universal, can be profitable, given the right opportunities. And we need to keep supporting. I'm going to watch this on tomorrow without a doubt. So I could support the story, and it's just incredibly inspiring. And the story itself is obviously inspiring. Somebody who came from nothing and, built this incredible life for himself based upon his idea. And just, man, again, it just shows you we're all capable of doing whatever it is that we want. We just have to start taking some risks and putting ourselves out there, which I think is beautiful. And that last story here about Gloria Estefan, legend, right? And becoming the first Latina inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. Again, it's just breaking ground. And any musician, any Latina out there who writes music can now see herself in that position operating at the highest level, right? And know that it's possible because she just saw someone else do it. And again, this now brings our music, our voices into the bigger conversation and normalizes our presence there, which is what we need in every industry. And that's why things like this need to be celebrated. And that's why they're important. And with that said, thank y'all so much for tuning into today's episode. JustB.NYC. You want to pick up some new merch? We have meditation pillows. I got a really dope jacket, windbreaker, some t-shirts, putting candles up there as well. You want to pick up the book, all that good stuff. JustB.NYC. And we are getting close to filling up our new mastermind group we're launching next month, the Just Be Social Club. So if you want to be a part of that, get on it. Brenda@mindofayounglord.com. Email her. It's really getting close to being full. So a couple slots left. Whoever wants to be in it, speak now, or you might have to wait another year until we open up the next one. So be a part of that. And that's it, man. Have an incredible weekend. I appreciate y'all for always tuning in. And I'll catch you on Tuesday with a brand new episode. So then, stay safe. Peace.